Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on what's new in iOS accessibility. My name is Luis Pérez. I'm an inclusive learning consultant based in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And I want to make sure you have my contact information before we get going. On Twitter, my username or handle is EyeOnAccess. That's EYEONAXS. It used to be Luis Pérez, but Luis Pérez is a very common name in Latin America, so you'll never be able to find me. So I had to change it to something a little bit shorter and more catchy, so EyeOnAccess. And then I also have a website, luisperezonline.com, where you can get access to a lot of free resources that I make available, including ebooks, iTunes U courses, handouts, and the like. So I'm so glad you're here to join us today. I am going to be sharing my screen for most of this presentation, so just give me 1 second, stick with me as I bring up my desktop. All right, so you should be seeing my desktop right now, and I'm going to switch to my actual presentation that I'm going to be using today. Okay, so we are going to be talking about the latest features in iOS. The latest version of iOS is iOS 10 that was just released this fall by Apple. And if things look a little bit different on your end, it may be because you're running an older version of iOS. It's really easy, really simple to update. As it says on the screen, you can go to Settings, then General, and then Software Update. But don't do that right now. Wait until the session's over, and then you can do that update. But doing the updates is good because you're going to get the latest security updates and also the latest features. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the settings. So I want to make sure that if you get lost at any point, you know where I'm going to be going back to, which is Settings, General, and Accessibility. And that's where all the built-in accessibility features of your iOS device, which could be an iPad, could be an iPhone, or an iPod Touch, that's where you'll find them. So if you see me going back into the settings, that's where I'm going to be headed. And then finally, before we get started, there is an important setting to be aware of, and this is the accessibility shortcut. And I liken the accessibility shortcut to a life preserver. Basically, when you're on a plane and they give you the life preserver jacket, that's what this is. This allows you to turn accessibility features on and off at any time. So if you get in trouble at any point, if you've set up your accessibility shortcut, you can just triple-click the home button and you can turn off some of these accessibility features. And we'll look at that in just a second in action. But just be aware of that. I always tell people, especially with some of the features we're going to look at, such as VoiceOver and switch control, they're very robust features, and it's really easy to get confused and get lost. So it's nice to have a way to just turn them off very quickly. And that's what the accessibility shortcut does. All right, so the way I've divided my presentation today is in 3 parts. And those 3 parts correspond to these 3 concepts that I want you to be aware of: accessibility, universal design, and inclusive design. You'll notice that they're within each other, and that's because they build on each other. So you can't have universal design or inclusive design, in my mind, unless you first address accessibility. And a phrase that I like to use when referring to these 3 concepts is, what is essential for some is almost always helpful for all. So you'll notice that a lot of the features that we use on our mobile devices today, originally they started out as features that were designed for people with disabilities. For instance, when you use Siri or a personal assistant and you get that voice feedback, originally that was designed as a screen reader for people who are blind. So accessibility has to be basically a foundation, if you will. But also as we kind of build out from accessibility to inclusive design, we're bringing in more people. So with accessibility, we start with people with disabilities. With inclusive design, it's about all of us, right? So let's take a look at those 3 concepts and then with some examples from the accessibility features. Accessibility. This is really about removing barriers and making it possible for people of all abilities to again showcase what they can do, showcase their ability. In fact, if you look at the word accessibility and you just change one word, that first I, it is accessibility. So that's what it does. It's when we provide accessibility, we allow people to access their full potential, their full capabilities. So how is this represented in iOS? And again, that could be your iPad, your iPhone, or your iPod Touch. And I'm going to focus on 3 features that are accessibility features. The first one is a brand new one. So this is only available if you've upgraded to iOS 10, and that's the magnifier. It allows you to use the camera on your device to magnify things out in the environment. So that could be something like the label on a pill bottle. That could be the serial number on a toy. Any of a number of things that may be difficult to see. You can now use the full resolution of the iOS camera to be able to see them a little bit better. VoiceOver is not new. This is a feature that's been around for a while, but in iOS 10, it has gained a pronunciation editor, which I just love because for years I've been hearing my name mispronounced by Alex in VoiceOver. So it's really nice to finally be Luis instead of Louis. And then finally, switch control, which is the built-in switch access. Very comprehensive switch access built in right out of the box into iOS devices. So I'm going to focus mostly on Magnifier because that's a new feature. I'm going to touch on VoiceOver and switch control a little bit, but we are doing separate webinars for those because, again, they're so robust and there's so much in there to go through. So with that, let me exit out my presentation, and I'm going to switch over to my iPad. And I have a really fancy camera here that I'm using as a document camera. And of course, that's my iPhone. All right, so first let's take a look at where you find the setting. I have it set up on my dock and maybe in a different place on your device. But if you look for that icon, that's a gray icon. It looks like it has gears on it. And tap on that. Because I have my iPad set up on its side here in the landscape orientation, I have it set up with 2 columns right now. Over on the left side, I'm going to tap on General, and then over on the right side, I'm going to choose Accessibility. So again, remember, that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time. Settings, General, Accessibility. These features are organized into different categories here under Accessibility. We have Vision, we have Interaction, we have Hearing, Media, so that's when you watch a video or you access a podcast, those kinds of things. Learning, under which we have guided access, which is single app mode. You can lock the iPad into a single app. And then the accessibility shortcut. And the accessibility shortcut, that's our life preserver, if you will. And in here, let's say that I wanted to experiment with VoiceOver. I would come in here and just tap and have only VoiceOver selected. That way, whenever I triple click the home button, as we'll do later, that's the only feature that will be turned on for the accessibility option. So this is great. It basically turns your home button into a toggle for any of these accessibility features. I'm going to leave that off for now, but we'll go back to it a little bit later. All right, so the first feature I want to talk to you, and again, this is brand new in iOS 10. You'll only see it listed under Vision if you've upgraded. It's called Magnifier. So I'll go ahead and tap on Magnifier under Vision, and then I'll go ahead and tap the toggle at the top and turn it on. Now you're probably wondering, nothing happened. What's this all about, Luis? Well, basically what we've done is just enable the feature. Now we're ready to use it, and in fact you get some directions here right underneath where that toggle is. And it just tells you here that you need to triple click the home button to start Magnifier. So Magnifier is based around the triple click home option. All right, so what I'm going to do is bring out my iPad a little bit, and just like it says in the instructions, I'm going to triple click home. It's going to launch the camera, and what I've done here is I've brought one of my business cards that's on a stand here, taped to the stand. And what I can do is I can zoom in and out using the slider, just like you would with the camera when you're taking a picture. The next thing is I can tap the shutter button, and it will freeze that image on the screen. Now, this is not a photo, if you will. This is not saved to my camera roll or anything. It's more like a freeze frame. So I can tap the screen, bring back the controls. So If at any point they kind of go away, if you wait just a second, you'll see that they go away. Or if you tap the screen, they also go away. While I have the freeze frame, I can move it around so that I can see my name, see what I do, just by moving around with one finger. I can also pinch in and out. So if I want to explore something in more detail, I can use a pinching gesture and then drag around with just one finger. If I want to bring back the controls, I'll tap once with one finger, and it brings them back. And then again, instead of pinching, I could use the slider. And I can go back and forth between a freeze frame and actual live video just by tapping the shutter button one more time. So that's the basics of Magnifier and how it works. And again, the advantage here is that there are apps out there that will do this, but Magnifier takes advantage of the full resolution of your iPad camera or your iPhone camera. The next thing I'm going to do is show you the filters, and these are great. There's a filter button. It's in the orientation that I have my iPad set up right now. It's in the upper right-hand corner, and it looks like a number of little circles. If I tap that icon, it now allows me to change the appearance of what I have on the screen. Or if I were in the live video mode, it would change what I'm looking at through the camera. So in here, I can switch different filters, if you will, different looks. So for instance, I can do, right now I have yellow and blue. And for each of these, I can also do the inverse. So instead of yellow and blue, I can go blue and yellow. There's an inverse button at the bottom here in the corner, lower right-hand corner. And that just does the inverse. And then if it still doesn't look okay for me, I still can't see it, I can use the sliders here to adjust the lighting, make it brighter, make it darker, and I can use a slider for contrast as well. So if I want to make sure that those letters really pop, I can use the slider and make that adjustment. So again, I'm doing all this on a freeze frame that was captured by the camera on my device. I can go back. So if I tap the filters button again and then use the slider, zoom in and out, or just go back to the live view just by tapping the shutter button. And now, whatever filter I've selected, I can use that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because I'm zoomed in too close. And then find that business card again. Let's see. There it is. And I can tap anywhere on the screen to focus, just like I would with a camera. So now not only am I zooming in, but I'm also applying that filter so that I have sort of a yellow overlay that makes that text stand out a little bit more for me. And to exit out of the magnifier, it's really simple. Just like any app, even though it's an accessibility feature, you just press the home button and it exits out back to wherever you were. So here I'm in the settings, so that's where I'm going to go back to. If I did this in another app, it would send me back to that last app that I opened. So to recap, Magnifier is a brand new feature in iOS 10. It takes advantage of the full resolution of your camera to allow you to magnify items out on the environment. And it has available a number of filters so that you can apply different color overlays to what you're magnifying, and you can also use sliders to adjust the appearance. Before I go on to the next accessibility feature, I want to remind you that we will have time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions that come up as I demo these features, please make sure to just put them in the chat area, and then I will get to those as we move along. All right, so the next feature, I'm not going to spend too much time on VoiceOver because we're going to look at that in more detail in a separate webinar. But I want to show you a brand new feature in VoiceOver, and that's the pronunciation editor. And the pronunciation editor for VoiceOver in iOS 10 is found under Speech. So you would go into VoiceOver in the accessibility pane, and then scroll down a bit and find Speech. And then you will find pronunciations at the top. You'll notice I've already created one. I was really tired for years of hearing my name mispronounced. So the first thing I did when I installed VoiceOver on this device was make sure I set up a new pronunciation. And so I can tap on Luis. I can see the phrase. So that's the first thing we'll do is type in the phrase we want to have pronounced correctly. And then what's really nice is we can just tap the microphone and have it pronounced correctly, or speak it into the microphone, and it will do basically a phonetic spelling out of it. And then you have some options here for which languages you want this available, which voices, and so on. So let me show you real quick how to create a new pronunciation. I'm in the pronunciations pane. I'll go ahead and tap the plus. I'll put in my good friend Jose. So I'll go ahead and type in Jose. O-E. And then I will tap the microphone icon right underneath where it says substitution. And I'll just speak the correct pronunciation of Jose. Jose.
Jose.
All right. It's not perfect. I know that because I'm Hispanic and I speak Spanish fluently. But it's much better than Jose, as it normally would say. And you can preview it at the top by tapping play and just see how well VoiceOver did.
Jose.
And that's it. So now we have Luis, we have Jose. And so again, you can do that for any proper names, any names of places, those kinds of things where a screen reader most likely would get them wrong. I'll go ahead and tap edit just to show you that it's really easy. At the bottom there's an edit option. And then you can tap the delete option. It's that little red circle with a dash on it. And then tap delete. And I can do that over again in the future if I need it. Now, how do you use VoiceOver? VoiceOver is one of those robust accessibility features where you definitely want to use the accessibility shortcut. So I don't want to get any angry emails from people who turn on VoiceOver and then don't know how to turn it off. So the first thing we want to do, you'll notice here that Magnifier uses the triple click home. So it's grayed out. I can't do anything about it in the accessibility shortcut. So what I'm going to do just for this demo is go in and turn off Magnifier because we've already taken a look at that. We won't be using it for the next section. So again, the accessibility shortcut is all the way at the bottom of the accessibility pane. When you tap on it, it'll give you a list of some of the accessibility features that you can turn on and off by triple clicking the home button. And in here, I'm going to set up VoiceOver to be the only option right now. So what I can do now is triple click home and that will turn on VoiceOver.
Landscape. Home button to the right. Settings.
And I did it too fast, so I did triple click and then an additional click, so it sent me to the home button, which is fine. So let me show you the basics of VoiceOver, and we'll cover this in more detail in a separate webinar. But what you do is VoiceOver is a gesture-based screen reader. And so what that means is instead of using keyboard shortcuts, you're going to use a series of gestures, one finger, some of them use 2 fingers, even 3 fingers. So the most basic gesture for VoiceOver is you'll flick with 1 finger to move what's called a VoiceOver cursor. That's the square that's around the currently selected app. So I'll flick over to the right a few times and you'll hear VoiceOver read out loud whatever is in that cursor.
PC Studio, Notes, Voice Stream, Camera. Okay. Double tap to open. Swipe up or down to select a custom action.
At any time, if it gets too chatty, you can just tap the screen with 2 fingers and that silences it or pauses it. Now, I can also go the other way. I can flick to the left with 1 finger.
Voice Stream, Notes, PC Studio, sound in the RD. Double tap to open.
And I'll tap with 2 fingers just to pause it because I have hints turned on, so it's always telling me what I should do next, which is a great idea to do that when you're first starting out, to turn on hints in the settings. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. To launch an app with VoiceOver, if you're blind, right, you don't know exactly where the screen, on the screen, this cursor is. So what you do is you first use the gestures or flicking gestures to select the app that you want to launch, and then you can double tap with 1 finger. And what's nice is the entire screen is essentially a big button. So you can double tap anywhere with 1 finger 2 times, and that will launch that app. And of course,
sound in the RD, user-created boards, heading.
And of course, this is a free app from Ablenet called Sounding Board. It's a communication app. And within the app, I can navigate in the same way. I can flick left or right.
Inclusive category, About Me, button.
And then I
Actions available.
And then I could launch any of these buttons by double tapping with one finger. So that's the basics of VoiceOver, is you use flicking gestures to move the cursor around, and then a double tap with one finger to activate an app or to activate a button or a control. To exit out of it, you just press the home button. It's like normally
RD. Double tap to open. Action.
And I'll tap with two fingers to stop it. Now here's a bonus trick here. The accessibility shortcut is really great for turning VoiceOver on and off. But another thing you can do is also use Siri. And this works with a number of the accessibility options. So what I'm going to do to turn VoiceOver off is actually tell Siri to do it. Turn VoiceOver off.
VoiceOver off.
I turned off VoiceOver.
And in a nice voice, it lets me know that VoiceOver is turned off. So if you ever get in trouble and you've forgotten that you've to set up the accessibility shortcut, another way you can get out of trouble is by bringing up Siri and trying to turn off an accessibility feature. And it doesn't work for all of them, but I know that it works for VoiceOver. All right, let's see where we're here. So far we've looked at two of the brand new accessibility features, Magnifier and then the pronunciation editor in VoiceOver. The next feature I want to look at is found in the interaction section. But the first thing I'm going to do before I look at it is I'm going to turn off VoiceOver in my accessibility shortcut. I'm going to enable switch control. This is the comprehensive switch access that's built into iOS devices. And I'm doing this in the accessibility shortcut because I want to make sure I have a way to get out of it if things don't work out the way that I intend them to. So with a lot of these features, of course, you can go to the accessibility pane, find that feature like VoiceOver here, and turn it on and off there. But that takes time, and you may be in an ebook, you may be on a website, and you just want to turn on that accessibility feature at that moment. That's where the accessibility shortcut comes in handy. So here's where you find it in the accessibility pane. If you scroll down, you'll find switch control under interaction. And just like with VoiceOver, you have all kinds of options for configuring the timing, the different access modes, and so on. So I'm not going to go into all the details here because just like with VoiceOver, we're going to do a separate webinar for that. The way that I'm going to turn on switch control on and off again is using the accessibility shortcut. And I can't mention that enough. Again, I don't want those angry tweets, those angry emails. Always make sure you have a backup or a way to get out of one of these features. So I'll go into the home screen, and I'll triple click home, and that's going to start switch control. And I'm going to use it in a mode called manual scanning. And those of you that are familiar with switch access, you'll probably recognize that as step scanning, because I'm going to use a switch interface. This is the Bluetooth from CableNet. It has two buttons built into it. So we have a button on the right, the orange one, button on the left, the white one. I'm going to tap one of these buttons to advance the cursor, and I'm going to tap the other one to make a selection. So cross your fingers. I'm going to triple click the home button and see if switch control comes on. There it is. We know switch control is enabled because we have a cursor. And I'm actually going to stop it for a second. The reason for that is I have the wrong access mode here enabled. If I go into switch control, I'm going to go into scanning style, and I'm going to set it to manual scanning. There is, as you can see, an auto scanning option. That's where the cursor will move on its own, and then all you have to do is press a switch to make a selection. That's really helpful if you only have one switch, because then half the work is done for you by the device itself, by the iPad or iPhone, and that the cursor moves on its own, and you just have to press the switch. But for this demo, I'm going to use manual scanning. So I'll go ahead and back out to the home screen, triple click home. Now I'm in full control. I'm going to tap one button, the one on the right, my orange one, move the cursor, and right now I'm moving by row. And basically it groups some of these controls so that you can move at a more global level first. And then when you want to kind of drill down you can tap your select button, which here I've set up my right one or my white one. So if I tap on that button now, it allows me to drill down and navigate by column. When I get to the option that I want, I will once again tap the selection button, the one that I've set up for select, and then by default it will bring up a menu, and that menu is called the scanner menu, and it has all the options of things that I can do. You can see I can go home, I can scroll, I can perform gestures. I want to point out, while I'm in here in the scanner menu, a feature that hasn't been covered a lot, but I think it really can make a big difference, and it's found on the device. And on the device, we can do things like bring up Control Center, or lock the device, or multitask, or switch apps. There's lots of options in here. These are things that maybe somebody who requires switch access can't perform on the device itself, but with these on-screen options, they have an alternative for them. What I'm going to do is show you, if I tap through here, there's a new feature in iOS 10 called Use Other Devices, or device switching. And I haven't seen this covered anywhere too much. So this is something unique that I haven't seen too much coverage of. And so, went away. There it is. So what this does is it will go through and it will scan for all my iOS devices that are on the same network. And now I could switch to any of these iPhones that I have on the network, and I could use the same switch interface with those other devices. Isn't that cool? So one switch interface, multiple devices. So when would you use it? Well, maybe you have a student who's using both an iPad and an iPhone. Maybe they're using the iPad to read a book and the iPhone to talk to somebody on the phone, or to perform some other action, communication actions. And I know a lot of students who do that. They have devices for different functions. So with this, it's really easy to switch back and forth. Again, it's found on the device, use other devices. I can just select a different iPhone that's on the network, and it will allow me to use the same interface with that other device. And if you have iCloud set up on all your devices, you can even switch between your iOS device and your Apple TV, because Apple TV now has switch control built right into it. And it looks very much the same as on iOS. So this is a great, great thing. I think it just adds a lot of flexibility, because you have to connect fewer things. I just have to set up one switch interface, and it will work all over my network. So that's switch control. Again, very briefly, because we're going to cover that in more detail in a separate webinar. So again, to review, switch control is the built-in switch access. It allows somebody who's a switch user to perform all of the gestures, access all of the device options using a variety of switches and switch interfaces. And to exit out of it, I'm going to triple click the home button, my accessibility shortcut, and then that will be turned off. There it is. All right, let me exit out of my demo there. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you, but I do have some resources at the end, and you'll be able to go back and review some of these things, and we'll also have some time for questions and answers at the end. So if you wanted to try this, here are a couple of things you could do on your device after this webinar is over. I would go out and find a pill bottle with very small text and just try out Magnifier and see how it allows you to access that small print. It's no longer a challenge. You have this portable magnifier with you at all times in your iOS device. And then the other thing you could do, if you wanted to practice VoiceOver, and I know you love to take selfies, is you can actually use VoiceOver with a camera. And the camera will actually recognize faces. So it will tell you if there are one face, two faces, three faces in the frame. And so that's the way that a completely blind person can take a picture and make sure that the whole family is in there. I know it was Halloween yesterday. That could be a challenge for VoiceOver. But maybe before they put the masks on, you could take a picture using VoiceOver and the facial recognition that's built into iOS. So a couple of challenges there for you to try this out on your own. Once this webinar is over, though, not right now. Okay, so moving right along, what we've looked at so far are features that are intended specifically for people with disabilities. The next concept that I want to focus on is universal design. And that's at the core of that is that idea, what is essential for some is almost always helpful for all of us. Here are a couple of examples of situations where universal design really comes into focus for everybody, not just people with disabilities. Trying to read your tablet while you're outside on a bright sunny day. If you try to do that, you know that it can be a challenge, even if you can see fully, right, if you don't have a visual impairment. Or how about listening to a podcast or watching a video and trying to pick out the audio when you're at a busy airport, like, say, Atlanta or Dallas or Chicago. These are airports that I travel through quite a bit. And even if you have headphones sometimes, they don't feel very well. So even then, you may be able to hear some of the content, but you probably miss every word here and there. So that's a situation where the closed captioning that's supported on iOS could be helpful. The other thing, and these two examples really highlight that with mobile devices, we can all be temporarily disabled. And part of that is we're using these devices in places where before we couldn't use a computer, right? I've seen people scuba diving with their iOS devices in a case. I want to highlight that. We can take them with us when we're hiking. We can take them with us when we're in the car, but hopefully not using them at the same time that you're driving. Maybe you have it on the stand and then you use your voice to interact with it. These are all situations where the environment requires that we use some of the accessibility features because the lighting may be difficult or our hands are busy. All of those kinds of things come into play. And then finally, all of us, I don't know anybody on this call that's not getting older. That's just, a fact of human life. Taxes and getting older are two things we can count on. So universal design is really designed for future us, right, or for future you. So these accessibility features, as we get older, our dexterity is not as good. Our ability to hear, our ability to see starts to fade a little bit. And so it's nice that we can start thinking about these features, not just as, for people with disabilities, but for all of us as we age. So in iOS, there's three features I want to highlight today. The first is a brand new one in iOS 10. It's called display accommodation. So if you haven't heard of that, today I will expose you to a little bit of the display accommodations. Speak selection and speak screen, they've been around for a while. We've just gotten a few enhancements in iOS 10. This is the built-in text-to-speech, which is a great support for learning. It really helps with decoding. Those students who struggle with decoding are struggling readers. And then typing feedback, and this is brand new in iOS 10. So it's something you only get if you update to the latest version. So two of these are brand new. The other one has just gotten an enhancement. All right, so enough talking about them. I'm going to go in on the iPad and show you how they work. So let's bring back the iPad. Oh. Or not. Let me see what happened here. Give me 1 second. I just got to bring back my iPad. We're doing so well, right? Give me 1 second while I get that iPad running again. Oh, there we go. Okay. And we're back. All right, that's what I wanted. I wanted to have it full screen so you can see everything nice and clear. All right, so the first I want to look at is display accommodation. You'll find this under settings, general, accessibility. It's going to be under vision, right below magnifier, which we looked at earlier. And in here you'll find an old feature called invert colors. This is what invert colors does. It turns the screen basically into a negative, if you will, so that now you have a dark background with light text. This is that feature that I was talking about, where if you're outside in bright lighting, this may be something that you want to turn on. Or if you don't want to disturb your significant other while you're sleeping next to them, you want to continue reading, this would also be helpful for keeping the peace in your household. So invert colors, this is not new, but they moved it into the display accommodation section. What's new is what we find under color filters. I'll go ahead and enable color filters. You'll notice my screen looks a little bit weird right now. That's because I've chosen the color tint option. And what that does is it allows me to go in and I can set up an overlay over the entire screen. And it's changing colors because I'm moving the slider for the hue. So I can go from a really warm color all the way to a bright red. And this is an overlay over the entire screen. So why would you use this? The feature is really for people that suffer or that have a condition called Irlen syndrome, and so otherwise known as visual stress. To be honest with you, I wasn't familiar with this condition until I started learning about this feature. So you can, I'm sure, look it up online. But this just places an overlay over the entire screen, and you can change the sensitivity of that overlay, and you can also adjust the hue at the bottom. I'll go ahead and turn that off and show you there are also now colorblind filters. You won't notice anything different unless you're colorblind, but you'll notice that because I've chosen the green-red filter, the toggle here, the button that's used for toggle, has changed slightly. The color has shifted a little bit. And this is, there are people that can't see certain colors, such as red or green, or even blue in some cases, blue or yellow. And so this allows an accommodation to be in place while they're using the screen by adjusting those colors. And by the way, this primarily affects males. I think it's 1 in 8 males has color blindness. And it's a much smaller number of women have color blindness. It's about half of 1%. So this may be a setting that your boys, your men in your life who are colorblind, they may find really useful. So that's the color accommodations or color filters. They're found under color accommodations in iOS 10. Let's take a look at the text-to-speech. This is found under speech. The two features I'm going to focus on are speak selection and speak screen. What is new for these features in iOS 10, if you go under highlight content, before it only did word-by-word highlighting. Now you can come in here, you can highlight the sentences, or you can do both. You can highlight the word and the sentences. And then what's really nice is you can, if you do select words and sentences or just sentences, you have the option of adjusting the highlight style. And the choices are underline or background color. I personally like to have it set so that the words are highlighted with a background color and the sentences are highlighted with an underline. So let's take a look at that in action. And to do that, I have a short note that I wrote. This note is going to highlight the high-quality voice that's built into iOS devices. And this is called Alex. So what I'm going to do to use speak selection is I'm going to go somewhere where there's some text. I know this is the note I wrote, so this is actual text. This could be a website. It could be an ebook. The only requirement is that it has to be actual text. It can't be an image of text. So what I'll do is tap and hold one of these words here, let go, I'll choose select, and then I'll move these handles to make a selection. And then I'll go ahead and tap speak. And that's actually a good telltale sign that I've enabled speech selection in the setting. The fact that I see speak lets me know this is turned on in settings. If I didn't see speak, then I would have to go back there and turn it on. So I'll go ahead and choose speak, and then you're going to hear through the speakers, hopefully, Alex speak this chunk of text out loud. Now, I want you to pay close attention to the breathing, because that's really important about Alex. It's the only voice that can do that. And I also want you to pay attention to the contextual processing that it can do. And that's possible because while it's reading one paragraph, in the background, it's actually processing the text around it. So I'm going to tap speak, and then we'll all listen to Alex as he reads out loud.
Hi, I'm Alex. I am an advanced voice for iOS devices such as your iPad and iPhone. I can simulate human speech, so much so that every once in a while I take a breath. While I am reading to you, in the background I am analyzing the next paragraph. This allows me to pronounce words that are spelled the same correctly based on their context. Here are a few examples. I am a bass player. I know nothing about bass fishing. She was about to wind the clock when she felt the wind in her face. He did not object to being the object of her affection.
All right, so hopefully you could hear that breathing, and you could also notice that contextual processing that it can do, so that even when words are spelled the same, based on the contextual clues, he can pronounce them correctly, such as wind and wind, or object or an object. All right, so that's one way you can use the text-to-speech, is you make a selection first, and then you have it speak out loud. The other way is you can perform a special gesture, and that's what speak screen is. The special gesture is you take two fingers and you swipe from the top of the screen as you feel pulling down the shade. I'll go ahead and do that real quick.
Hi, I'm Alex. I am an advanced voice.
And I'll pause it. So one of the advantages of speak screen over speak selection is you get these on-screen controls. So it's very easy to find them, to pause, to change the navigation, so you can navigate ahead or go back. And you can also change the speed here using the on-screen control without having to go into settings. If at any point it hides itself, you can just tap the arrow, the chevron, it brings it back. And again, I can tap the play and resume where I left off.
For iOS devices such as your iPad and iPhone.
And I'll pause it by tapping the pause button there, and then I'll tap the X, and it will kind of put it away. This is one where you could also use Siri. And I could just say speak screen, and it would start reading from the top. Speak screen is a little bit different than speak selection because it reads everything on the screen. So it's not just the text, it's all the buttons, all the interface elements. So that's something to be aware of. And then the other thing is it doesn't work on the home screen. You have to go inside of an app or inside of a note or a document and then say speak screen, and it will start reading out loud. So I use both of them. Another advantage of speak screen is if you do this in iBooks, it will actually also flip the pages for you. So you get two for the price of one. So let me repeat that. If you enable speak screen, which you can do with either Siri or the special two-finger swipe down gesture in iBooks, it will not only read continuously, but it will also flip the pages for you. So that is the built-in text-to-speech. We've looked at some of the new features, such as the ability to highlight sentences, the ability to adjust the highlighting style. A lot of apps are building on this. I want to share one with you very quickly. One of my favorite ones is Voice Dream Reader. This is I think it's $14.99 now. It was $9.99 when I first got it. But this is an app where you can bring in documents such as Word documents, PDFs, as long as they're accessible. And you can even connect it to your your Bookshare account. So Bookshare is a service for people with a qualifying disability. What's nice about this is if you go in under the Voices option, you can use any of the iOS voices, but then you can also purchase additional voices. And so for this demo, we're going to be hearing one of these commercial voices that you can purchase within the app. It's an in-app purchase. It's called Olivia, and it's an actual child's voice. So you're not relying on an adult with a pitch change and so on. The nice thing about this too, just like with speak screen, we do have some control all the way at the bottom. But if you want to just start reading, you can just double tap a word and it'll start reading there. So let's listen to this.
Text-to-speech is a helpful aid for those who struggle with decoding text. The basic steps for building text-to-speech features of iOS are line-by-line highlighting. It also allows you to adjust a number of options for a more customized reading experience. For example, you can select a special font designed for people with dyslexia change the appearance of both the text and the background, and even choose different voices.
I'll go ahead and pause it using the controls at the bottom. As it said there in the demo, if we tap the options for visual settings, which are at the top of the screen, we can come in here, we can make the background light, dark, or even we can choose custom colors. And this is what's really powerful and what sets it apart from the built-in text-to-speech, is that we can come in here, we can customize the colors for the words, for the spoken line, background, and so on. So it adds just a little bit more customization, or a personalization, if you will, to the built-in text-to-speech. And then my favorite feature here is the fact that I can go in and I can choose how many lines are visible at one time. So if I want to take away some of that distraction, I can go in, set the lines visible to even as little as 1, in which case it just becomes a mask, if you will, so that you're only seeing 1 line at a time. Or 5, or I can just show them all. And you can access that feature. You can go in and out of the focus mode just by pinching in and pinching out. The last feature I want to show you here with VoiceStream Reader is something brand new. It's called Pac-Man mode. And rather than me telling you about it, I'll have the device itself do it. So I'll turn it on in my options, and then I'll go ahead and double tap the first word in this paragraph.
A brand new feature even allows you to enable Pac-Man mode. If you were a child of the 1980s, you probably already know what Pac-Man mode does. It eats away the words as you read, just like the game. Based on research at MIT, this has been shown to double reading speed without a loss of comprehension.
So that is Pac-Man mode. It basically removes those words you've already read, remove some of that distraction. The last thing I want to highlight is the font here, which was already mentioned when I did the demo. This is a special font called Dyslexic. If I go in here and into the font settings, it's Open Dyslexic, sorry. But there is also a font called Dyslexia. So there's 2 dyslexia-friendly fonts. The research on these types of fonts is still ongoing. There's not definitive research in favor of them. But if this is something that a student likes, something that works for them, I say go ahead and try it, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. Does it work for the person or not? All right, so I will go ahead and exit out of VoiceStream Reader. I wanted to highlight that app just because, as I said, it kind of builds on what's already included and just takes it to the next level with more options for customization. The next feature I want to talk about is the typing feedback. This is brand new in iOS 10. Let me bring my keyboard up. And what this does is, as you're typing, if you wait just a little bit, it will actually pronounce the last letter. So this could help those learners who struggle with spelling or coming up with telling those letters apart. So let me show you how it works first, and I'll show you where the settings are for it. I'm going to start typing a word, and I'm going to pause after one of the letters.
L. M.
So if I just wait a little bit after typing that letter, it will go ahead and say it out loud. So that way I can be sure, I've entered an M, not an N, or a P instead of a Q, and so on.
A.
And then if I tap the space bar to indicate this is a complete word, I'll hear that last word spoken out loud.
Welcome. 2.
And of course I can use the prediction.
O. iOS 1, 0, 10.
So you can use the typing feedback just to make sure you've entered the correct text, but you can also use the word prediction that's built in, which is called QuickType. So these predictions appear right above the keyboard. And then, of course, you can use the dictation to finish that off. Exclamation mark. The best version of iOS Apple has released. Exclamation mark. New line. New line. I love it. Exclamation mark. You can use
this very mobile as Apple has released. The love lead.
All right, I think I have the language set up there wrong. So, but in any case, you can use these supports together. You can use the typing feedback, you can use the built-in word prediction, and you can use the dictation. Many different ways to get that text into the page, or in this case, the screen. And then if you want to, you can also even switch the keyboards. So here's one that I use. It's called the Keyboard. It gives me bigger keys. They have the letters in the dyslexia-friendly font, and some of them are color-coded, and that really helps me find those keys. And there's a number of these third-party keyboards. They're downloaded from the App Store just like any app, and then you go into your keyboard settings and you tell iOS, oh, I want to use that keyboard or have it available to me. And then you switch between these keyboards by just tapping the globe icon on the keyboard itself. And so you'll see I'll flick through a number of these. They all do different things. But my favorite one that I use most of the time is the keyboard one, and the reason for that is I am actually visually impaired. And so I actually need some of these features that I've been talking to you about in order to access the content on my device. All right, let me switch back to my presentation here and then do our last segment together. So if you want to try this, here's a fun thing to do, which is to go in to Twitter. If you have a Twitter account, create a tweet using dictation, using the built-in QuickType word prediction, and then use speak selection or speak screen, that built-in text-to-speech, and hear that tweet read out loud before you post it. All right, so there are many other options. I won't get a chance to cover them all, but here you can see on the screen there's support for closed captions. There's dynamic text. It basically allows you to enlarge the text inside of apps. Touch accommodations for those who struggle with unwanted taps and so on. Assistive touch provides home screen options for some of the physical buttons, such as the volume button. Mono audio converts stereo signal so that the same two channels come out of each channel, or it combines the channels, I should say. So if you've lost your hearing in one ear, you can still get the full recording of the Beatles. And so that brings us to inclusive design, which is the last thing I want to end with. And those are flexible designs that adjust to individual variability and the fact that we all vary. And that variability can be expressed in a number of ways, and it also varies according to the environment and the task that we're performing. So in iOS, as a bonus feature, as I end here, I want to make sure you're all aware of Safari Reader. This is not an accessibility feature, but it's one of those features that just adds a little bit more flexibility to your device so that it can be used by more people. And as I mentioned, Voice Dream Reader, I have the price wrong here. It's actually now $14.99. But that's also an example of inclusive design, because that app was not designed for people with disabilities, but it was designed in a way that it has all of these options for the appearance, for the voices, for the way you interact with it, where any of the number of users can find something that works for them inside of the app. So let me just give you a quick demo of Safari Reader. That'll be the last thing that I show you. So let me exit out of here, bring back my iPad. And so there's no setting for Safari Reader in the settings. That's because, again, it's not something that's in an accessibility feature. It's something that's actually built into the web browser on your mobile device. And what happens is I'm going to go back here, and actually I had a page up on color blindness, but let me go back to Time for Kids, which is a great website for accessing the news, right, for kids, specifically designed for kids. If I go into one of these articles, and you have to be inside one of the articles, it won't work on the home page. Once you go there, you'll see a special icon in the URL bar at the top of the screen. And it looks like a page of text. And if you tap on that icon, what it does is it gets rid of all that content, that extra content, like the ads. And it just leaves you the text and maybe a few images that are essential for understanding. So if you have those learners who struggle with being distracted all the time when they're reading online or doing research online, this is a great feature to come in here and make them aware of. That they can go ahead and just disable all those ads, all that blinking content. While you are in Reader, you can also access some appearance options. And those are on the right side of the URL bar. And so in here, we can go in, we can change the background. We can choose different fonts. So for instance, San Francisco is a font that's specifically designed for reading on screen. So now we have a more customized reading experience where that text is much better, much easier to perceive. And then we can also adjust the size. So again, and I can go back and forth. I can tap the icon. This is what the website looks like with all that extra content. And this is what it looks like when it's cleaned up. While I'm in here, all those accessibility features that I talked about, you can use them. You can use the speak selection. You can use speak screen. You can use VoiceOver. It just gives you a much simpler interface to work with, where those features are going to be even easier to use. Right? It's going to be easier to find where you want to make that selection. And there's going to be fewer things that are going to be spoken out loud by speak screen. So that is Safari Reader. It's built into the web browser on your iOS device. It's not an accessibility feature per se, but it's there to just make the reading experience more customizable for everybody. All right, so we're almost to the end here. I just wanted to give you a challenge. Again, go to your device, open a web page in Safari, and then just use Safari Reader. Try it out. See how it works for you. Now, I was really proud. I want to end with this. I was watching the Apple keynote for the release of the new MacBook Pros earlier this week. And I was really surprised at the beginning of the keynote because they feature somebody with a disability at the beginning of the video. And it turns out that it's somebody that I know. She kind of surprised me that way. Her name is Sadie Paulson. And she was part of a book that we co-wrote called I Am More Powerful Than You Think. And basically, it's a collection of stories highlighting how these accessibility features really change our world. I'm one of the people featured on there because, as I said, I'm visually impaired. Sadie is in the lower right-hand corner. If you go back and watch the beginning of that Apple keynote, they have a really, really nice video, which, by the way, she edited herself because she has a degree in cinematography, and she is a Switch user who has cerebral palsy. So it's really, really nice video, really nicely done. And I can't say enough about Sadie. She is really my inspiration. I am, in addition to being visually impaired, I'm also, I have a great hobby for somebody with my visual impairment, which is I'm a photographer. So as I turn it over to our Q&A, I want to just show you a few of my photos, a few of my favorite photos. And these are all the photos that you're seeing. These were all taken with an iPhone because it's the only camera I can use. I can't use a regular camera anymore since I have no peripheral vision and very poor low light vision. So basically my eyes don't get enough light, so I'm not able to see through the camera very well. But on the iPhone, I can adjust the brightness. I can have the menu spoken out loud to me. And if I'm taking a portrait, I can use the facial recognition, and it'll tell me how many people are in the frame. So again, all of these were taken with the same iPhone or that you may have in your pocket. These are even older iPhones. These are probably the 5 and the 5S. And if you want to see more of my photos, I do mostly travel and landscape photography. I love sunsets. My vision loss is progressive. I only have a limited number of sunsets left, unfortunately, because there's no cure. And so I try to take as many sunsets as possible. So if you go to Instagram, you can find me as LFP1211. You can see some of my photos there. So with that, I want to challenge you with this to close. What is your passion? Or if you're working with somebody who has a disability, what is their passion? And then how can you use technology to make yourself or that person more powerful? Because I always like to say with technology, we all now have superpowers. We can enhance our hearing, we can enhance our vision, we can enhance any of a number of abilities that we have to get even more out of them. I mentioned that I was going to share a couple of resources with you. I have a couple of books available on the iBook store. One on low vision support is called Zoom In. The other one is on switch access, it's called Hands-Free. And the Hands-Free one I co-wrote with an expert switch user called Christopher Hills. So go check those out. The URL is bit.ly, bit.ly/. www.magnifier.com/LFP ebooks. Okay, so check those out. Be happy if you would write a review. I always appreciate feedback, what you would like to see in these books. So with that, I will end this, and I will turn it over to the Q&A and see what questions you come up with me, how you try to stump me. So let me stop sharing my screen. I'll go back to the interface. Let's see if I can do this right. It's in here somewhere. All right. Okay, so let me just bring up the last screen here, just so that you know. I want to really thank AbleNet for this opportunity to come to you today, and thank you all for attending. And here is some information from AbleNet. Make sure you connect with them. They make some great devices like the switch interface I was using today. All right, so it looks like we have a few questions here. I'm going to try to find them. Again, bear with me. I have a difficult time seeing this interface. I'll try to read them aloud as well. Okay, the first question from Rebecca. How does this new triple-click home function for Magnifier interface with the triple-click used for guided access? That's a good question. So guided access, which I did not show you today, but you can try out on your own. It's found under learning in the accessibility setting. That also uses the triple-click home feature for you to launch it. What happens, Rebecca, is if you have both guided access and Magnifier enabled, when you triple-click home, a menu will pop up. And that's the behavior anytime that you have more than one of the accessibility features enabled in the accessibility shortcut. Basically, you'll get a menu. And then you can choose, oh, do I want to go Magnifier this time, or do I want to go with guided access? So that menu is the key there. All right, Linda has a question. All right, the question is, I've noticed that some text will read out loud with speech selection, but it will not highlight as it reads. Is this true with certain formats of text? Sometimes with PDFs, I've noticed that there's an issue with the text-to-speech. That's always going to be an issue with text-to-speech in certain formats. The PDF is one of them. It really depends on how that PDF was created, whether it's accessible or not. So it will generally work really well in, for example, your word processor, on web pages, but some formats like PDF do kind of give the text-to-speech some trouble. Okay, let's see. Next question from Linda again. I wasn't clear. What was the nature? What was the nature of a third-party on-screen keyboard that you really like to use? I will spell that out. It is Keeble, K-E-E-B-L-E. And the company that makes it is Assistiveware. And those of you in the field probably know Assistiveware from ProLoco to Go and ProLoco for Text, their communication apps. So that's a great keyboard, one of my favorites because of the many options that it has. Let's see, Linda, you really give me a workout here. If you use speech selection now in a website, will it highlight as it reads out loud? Yes, it will. So definitely, if it finds accessible content, so again, it can't be an image of text, it has to be actual text that you can select, then yes, it will highlight in that website. All right, Janelle has a question. How do you activate typing feedback? Basically, you go into the settings, and there is a little switch for it where you can go in and just tell iOS, oh, I want to use this feature. So if I go into General, Accessibility, and it's going to be found under Speech, you'll find an option in there for typing feedback. And essentially what you can do is tell it whether you want to hear the characters or just the words. So whenever you type the space bar to indicate that it's a full word, then it'll be read out loud. So it gives you some options for the timing there, how long it waits before it says the last character. All right, let's see. Tracy has a question. What program do you use to record your iPad demo videos? Oh, that's a good question. I actually use Reflector. And right now I am sharing an iPhone that I'm using as a document camera because it's on a stand. And then I share that to my Mac using the Reflector app. I think it's something like $15 or $20, but it's really nice to have if you do these kinds of training sessions. It really allows everybody to see what you're doing on the iPad. The only thing is I wish Apple would add a cursor. That's the reason why I was using document camera, if you will, instead of just mirroring the screen, because I wanted you to see what gestures I was performing. Tracy has a follow-up. The follow-up is, did you mention hold-to-speak predictions? That is, no, I did not, Tracy. Thanks for bringing that up. That is actually part of typing feedback. And so what that does is those word predictions that appear above the keyboard, you can tap and hold on them to hear them read out loud if you have typing feedback enabled. And that way you can be sure that you're actually inviting people to the school for the deaf and not the school for the dead, which I've done before. The enrollment is a little bit different at the school for the dead. All right, and then I think we come to the last question. Stephanie, when the text-to-speech was reading in VoiceStream, it was not tracking correctly. Is there a way to correct it while reading? I've had this happen as well. Sometimes it has to do with the performance of your device. So I've seen it happen more on older devices. But then also, sometimes it also happens to me when I'm projecting. Just because if you could hear my devices right now, at least the Mac, the screen is really going pretty good with all the stuff that I have running. But again, that's a performance issue. It's not necessarily an issue with the app. It's just that text-to-speech is overlaid over everything else that's going on. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I hope I answered all your questions. And if not, at least I pointed you in the right direction. Again, my website is luisperezonline.com. And on Twitter, I am at IonAccess. So hopefully I'll see you back here for other webinars. And again, thank you to AbleNet for hosting me today and allowing me to come to you. Thanks so much, everybody.